Should your church be using social media? That's the question. This video is not going to present you a very short answer because this question is complicated. And here's the deal. It's going to be different for every single church. My name's Graham and I'm with the Connect Ministries team. And at Connect Ministries, over the past 19 years, we've helped 2,000 churches meet over 250,000 people. So let's start with this. Every church is different. Every church is different. Some, might be 10 people. They're getting started, or they don't have a bunch of people in their area, or they're in a country where it's hard to gather. Some might be in the 50 to 200 range. They have a good community, you know people. And then maybe you've got on the far other end of the spectrum, you've got a church like the one in Acts that right after Pentecost, you got 3,000 people showing up. It's a big church. It's hard to know a lot of people. But size is not the only thing that differentiates churches. Numbers are not the only part of what makes a church different from another church. Churches are in different communities. They're in different countries. They're in totally different demographic areas. There are all sorts of different types of churches. And so here's the short answer. If your church is large and has a large number of people that can help and has a budget for it, then Connect Ministries would kind of say, why not use social media? It's an incredible opportunity. It's your front door. No longer are people just showing up to a church and that's the first time they're seeing it. They're looking at your website, they're looking at your social media, and people are doing a lot of research. I think the number is about 80 to 85% of people are looking up a church before they show up for the first time. And so if your church is able to, and it has the bandwidth and the capacity, then yeah, I think your church should probably be using social media. If your church is smaller or it's in a different environment, then I don't think the question is as easy to answer. It's not as cut and dry. There's no one size fits all answer to this question of if churches should use social media, because social media is a new technology and we're going to get into all sorts of different details. This video is about to get into the weeds. So if you're ready, let's buckle up and let's dive in. Okay, so those differentiators, small and large, are probably not the best way to differentiate which type of church should use social media and which type of church should not. Because honestly, any church can be using social media. I know of a fairly small church where they have a volunteer who is an absolute superstar at getting sermon clips and posting things and keeping announcements and keeping just content and resources flowing. And they have an excellent social media feed, even though their bandwidth would say they probably couldn't. I also know of several large churches that they have the bandwidth, they have several people in their communications team, and yet their social media is ineffective. It may not be bad, but it's ineffective. It goes to show that you can't base the answer to this question on the size of the church, because the thing is, every single church is different. God designed every single church differently because he designed everybody differently, and every church is made up of different types of people. If God puts a burden on your church, maybe that's food ministry, maybe that's a youth outreach center, maybe it's a sports ministry at a gym, maybe it's something overseas, your church does a lot of missions, maybe it's a digital ministry, maybe it's your church has a really good worship team and they help music or write music that helps other churches worship. Whatever God puts on your heart and gives the people gifted to do in that church, then do it well. And if your church has the ability to do social media and God's put it on your heart, then do it with excellence. Because so many churches, they're just doing it to do it and they don't know why they're doing it. And because they don't know why they're doing it and they don't have the bandwidth to do it well, they're just stressed and they're stretched thin and they're doing it very poorly. It goes to show you that just because the size of your church is not going to be the determining factor. So what is that determining factor? Okay, so there is no command that you have to use every tool at your disposal. Right now, I'm the video guy for Connect. There is a camera that I'm talking to right now, there's lights, but there's also a bunch of tools that are out in a locker where I have not touched them in a little while, and I'm not going to use them for this video and this setup, because this video does not need every single tool that we have. Now, as a video editor, I use this tool. This is a hard drive, and it has about 2 terabytes on it. And for me, this tool is indispensable. I use it all the time. I have it organized. It's a very efficient tool. And if I were a video editor and I was talking to another video editor at a conference, I would say you should probably get this drive if you need a hard drive, because it's a very good hard drive. But if I were trying to sell you on this hard drive and you don't need a hard drive and you are in a country where you don't even have a computer that you use all the time, and any other number of reasons, you get the point, you don't necessarily need a hard drive. It's a very great tool. I like to use it. I try and use it effectively. I know people who don't use it effectively, and then there's people who don't even need a hard drive. You see, social media is a tool. I think of if you're in a house or at a house and you've grown up and you have a beautiful lawn. Maybe you've got some Bermuda grass, and maybe you've got a big lawn or a small lawn, but you've got a lawn. And someone is telling you that you need to mow the lawn because it's getting very weedy. And you have a bunch of weeds growing up and it's time to mow the grass that's getting tall. And so you go get a lawnmower. And what type of lawnmower you could get a bad lawnmower, you could get a good lawnmower. But the point is you probably need a lawnmower. And you'd be telling your friends they need to use the lawnmower and have their grass looking good. If you have a house that has grass, you should probably mow the grass. But here's the thing, not everybody lives in a house that has a big yard or a small yard that even has grass. A lot of people live in a city and there's no grass anywhere in sight for several miles. Every community and every church is going to be in a different situation, in a different season. And so it comes back to, you should do what God puts on your church's heart. Whatever your church is burdened with, maybe they're burdened for a digital presence and a digital outreach. And we'll get into a few more details of maybe what that might look like and some things that might be confusing that burden. But it comes down to not every person is going to use a video editing drive, and not every person needs a lawnmower for their grass. And not every person is going to do the exact same job in the church. Paul talks about how in the church there's people with different gifts and different abilities, and the ear is not needing to be the foot, and the foot would be a bad nose, and the head is not going to be the arm. Everything of the body works together in unison. And the church is also the global church. Not every single church has to do the exact same thing because the church is one big church. As we look into churches that are using it, you can probably think of some churches that use it ineffectively. They have social media and it's just not effective. The graphics are maybe created with AI, or they just don't look good, or there's a different graphic every time and it's just hodgepodge and it's just announcements, and the last announcement was 3 months ago because they got tired of using it, or the person doing it didn't know how to, or they left and they didn't find someone to replace it, and whatever. You get the point. Some churches are not using it effectively. And another point to consider, there's gonna be a lot of points to consider here, is the church is not just one communications pastor. The church is not just one volunteer on the communications team. The church is a global group of people, and the church is a group of people even within the local church. It's a body of people. It's not just one person. And one person may be in charge of social media, but church is more than just one person. Back in the day, I say back in the day for me, obviously I'm a little bit younger and I didn't have the full incredible era of newspaper. I kind of wish it was still a thing, but I did grow up just a little bit getting to see a newspaper and seeing the church listings. And that was an effective way back then to communicate. And there are still some communities that are effectively communicated with a newspaper. And if you didn't use a newspaper back then, maybe God put it on your church's heart to use a newspaper to advertise, and maybe God didn't put it on your church's heart. But just like a newspaper is now a little bit outdated, sadly, technology today, social media is going to be changing, and there's no definitive you have to use it or you don't have to use it. Obviously, it's a very wise choice to use it in some instances. People are looking up churches online, they're looking up places for hope, they're looking up information, and if they don't find anything, or if they find something that's ineffective and poor quality, then that might taint their view of your particular church. The barrier to get on social media is free. It is free to create an account, it is free to create business accounts. You can even get money from Google to do a Google grant. There's all sorts of things out there. And so the barrier to entry is very, very low, incredibly low. But the barrier to doing it really well is actually kind of high. Because in order to do something well, it takes time. It takes education, and it can just be draining trying to manage something that once you do it, you can't just let it run. You have to continue maintaining it. I think of the level of quality as something a little bit like film. As the film guy, I have tried really hard to make some good films. And it takes a lot of effort to make a good film. Because one, you can go the really cheap route and you can do, a handheld video footage where it's lost in the wood style, and you're being very authentic to what you can make at that budget level. Because it's really hard to make a really good looking film without a lot of money. And there's a reason that Hollywood puts a lot of money into their films, because it takes a lot of effort to do all sorts of things in order to make it a high quality film that looks like a film. There's a lot of reasons, a ton of money goes into that. And so just like I can't go make $1 million looking film just easily, I might be able to make a 1 minute clip that looks close enough, but it's gonna take a ton of effort. And so we're either using a bunch of money or a bunch of effort. And for some people and for some churches, it's not worth it using that much effort for something that God has just not put on their heart and they're not passionate about, and it's not helping them reach new people. And for other people, they have the resources and they need to use it really well because they do have the resources, and to do it ineffectively is a bad stewardship of their resources. We've talked through a lot, and there's still a little bit more coming because this question is still not completely answered. Should churches be using social media? At this point, you probably got some thoughts, and I'd love to hear them in the comments, because there's no way to look at this question that's moving and is a bullet moving through time and is constantly changing. There's no way to answer it completely. And so I want to raise as many possibilities as I can, but also realize that there's no way to answer it completely. So let me know what you're thinking in the comments. Should churches be using social media? Does your church use social media? Do you think your church should or should not be using social media? I'd love to know. So one common thing that's brought up, especially with a smaller church, is thinking when we do have an event that we want to invite people to, then isn't social media a good use of that? The question and answer, once again, is a little bit gray because, for example, you're going to advertise your Easter egg hunt for Easter. You want a bunch of people to be there. Social media is an effective tool to get the news out, but the way to make it an effective tool is by putting a bunch of work before you get to that point. Because if you were to just post into the void that it was happening, number one, it probably wouldn't be seen by a lot of local people. And then number two, it's just not going to be seen by a lot of people in general. Because announcements are not something that spreads on social media. Social media is designed, engineered so that something that has high engagement is going to get seen by a bunch of people. And something that's just an announcement that's not helping anybody's day, is not adding value to them in any way, is just going to get scrolled past. And so it's not going to have high engagement, and therefore it's not going to reach a bunch of people. But if your church were to put in a bunch of, say, sermon clips or a bunch of values being added out and encouragement, or just interesting ways of doing things or stories from the community, and there's high engagement on those posts, then when a post about an announcement goes out, then it might get more engagement. But it's going to take a bunch of work in order to make it effective. It's not just a one-time thing where you post it and all of a sudden it's effective. In order to make those type of posts effective, it takes a lot of work. While algorithms are moving towards a more local direction and trying to get content towards people that are local and can do something about it, you're engaging the entire world. However many people are connected to the internet or are on the social media platforms, those are people that are getting reached in some way. And God put your local church in your community for that reason. And sometimes you can try and reach the entire world and you don't realize that you're missing the people in your community. It brings up the point that social media is a broken system. And we can't completely dismiss it because we live in a broken world and God calls us to engage that world. But for some people, it's not worth engaging a broken system like social media. First, you have to play by social media's rules in order to get reach. God is an unhurried God. He's a God of stillness, the still small voice. And still small voices don't do really well on social media. Social media is about moving fast, about engagement, about starting a video as soon as it can. No bumper, no intro, just immediately starting and keeping people with a very fascinating clip that's a little bit out of context in order to get people to listen really quickly, and then they're scrolling on to the next thing. It's not a place where a still, small voice is heard really well. Now there can be encouragement, and there's some incredibly creative people out there that God has gifted with a way of engaging that broken environment. But if you want to engage it, it may be harder than you think. Also, it's not the real world. The online world can be fake, and there can be a feeling that you have to engage with everything happening in the world, and you can miss what's happening right outside your front door. The real world is the real world. The online world, this right here talking on YouTube through a platform, is not always speaking directly to your situation. The real world is hard to get a grasp on when you're living in the online world all the time. I think of a pastor who's telling me that his congregation would get outraged over something happening in another country and not think about the person who's sitting outside their department store who's begging for money. Another one is sometimes you think about the random story of impact. You posted something, a sermon, and you got a comment from some person in some random country, and they're like, this was life-changing, this changed my life. And you don't know who this person is. Chances are you can't follow up with this person, but that random story keeps you going. And here's the attention to put on it. How many churches are out there putting out their sermons on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere? And how many of them can do that job that God has put on their heart really well? Just because you can do something may not mean that God has put that on your heart. And so that one random person, yeah, God did use you, praise God. But he also could use a bunch of other churches. That could be a flawed perspective, thinking about, well, then we aren't going to go on mission trips because God could use somebody else. So it can become a flawed perspective, but it's also something to keep in mind that just because one person has been reached doesn't mean that that is exactly what God has for your church. A couple other things to consider in the tensions of should you use it or should you not is if you are using it, there's a little bit of a pride factor that comes in. The church is not representing Jesus himself on social media. It's representing whatever the name of your church is and their logo and the pictures that you're putting out. You're talking about your church. And yeah, it's awesome to hype up the church. Christ died for the church. But the church can also get a little bit prideful and trying to get likes, and you're just naturally going to get sucked into the rhythm because it's designed that way of trying to get more likes and trying to get more engagement. And the way to do that is to post faster and more direct, sometimes more helpful things. And you can push back against the algorithm. You can have a still small voice at times and be the voice of preaching encouragement and hope out into the community. But social media is a platform that is designed to focus on yourself. And so a church can fall into the trap of a little worrying about pride. We're dealing with a flawed landscape, but also the entire world. It is a fallen, broken world, and God has us in the middle of it. The church is the hope of that fallen world. And so for some churches, it may be worth engaging with the social media world, the landscape. And for other churches, it may not be worth it. We've talked about size, we've talked about culture, and I would put it at this. It's something you should consider. It's something you should discuss. It is okay to say no to social media and not be involved on social media. But I believe you should at least discuss it and think about it, because it can be an incredible tool. But not everyone, not every church has to engage with this tool. There's no command to. So this is someone giving you permission not to do it. But also, you shouldn't take that as a chance to be stubborn and to think that, wow, we have a chance to engage here, but I'm not going to engage with social media because someone just told me I don't have to. I'm going to be stubborn. I'm going to do it my way. Because seeking God means seeking God. And when you're seeking God, He may have you do something that you didn't necessarily think was going to be something you were planning to do. And if you do say yes, just know you're saying no to a bunch of other things. By saying yes to doing social media and doing it effectively and doing it with excellence for the kingdom of God, there's a lot that you're saying no to. It takes resources, it takes effort, it takes a lot of work in order to use social media effectively. It either takes a bunch of money or a bunch of time. And it's hard to continue it and to keep it going and to use it effectively. It's a challenge that is worth it because ministry is hard. There's a lot of things that are hard. But by saying yes to social media, you're saying no to a bunch of other things. Because God did not make His church to do it all. Then we wouldn't need His Spirit. We have limits. God made us with limits. And that's why we need God. And so, just remember, the eye cannot be the nose, and the nose cannot be the foot, and the foot cannot be the arm. Do what God has put on your heart and on your church's heart. And be humble to change and learn. Don't think that because it's always been one way, it's always going to be that way. God is a living and active God. And finally, whatever God has put on your heart, do it with excellence. If you're going to do social media and you choose to do it, and I believe it is a very effective tool, not every church should do it, but I think it is an effective tool, then please do it with excellence.